I have missed or decided against taking some planned trips. I already did earlier episodes about choosing to not take a trip on a caravan across all the African countries of the Sahara. Had I made it through that trip, had I survived, I would have likely continued on to see all the African countries south of the Sahara. 2 episodes ago, I looked at 2 trips, which I would have had to trek great distances deep into the Amazon. One to explore a newly found lost city, and the other in search of unknown tribes of the Amazon. I'll do another episode down the road about a planned trip to Central Asia. A car accident prevented this just 2 months before I was going to leave. I was going to start by climbing the highest mountain in Europe, Mount Elbrus, which is in Russia and stands at 18,510 feet, 5,642 meters. I would have done a few other hikes through the Caucasus Mountains, which Mount Elbrus is a part of. I would then have traveled through the countries of Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia. The Soviet Union had opened up, which had led to a new fascination for me of the stands, or the countries of Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan. I'd long been fascinated with the Northern Silk Route. I would have done it through the stands, then by climbing over the Tian Shan Mountains into northwestern China, through the Taklamakan Desert and ancient ruined cities, eventually ending in Xi'an, the city where much of the silk has come from in history. This portion of the Silk Route was nearly 9,000 kilometers or 5,500 miles. My journey would have been far longer. During all this, I would have also visited Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, Nepal, and Bhutan. This was just before we went to war with Afghanistan. Another time, I met a lady in Argentina. I decided to cancel parts of my trips to Uruguay, Paraguay, Brazil, and Venezuela. She was worth missing those places, and I was sure I would make a return trip to cover more of South America. Yet another trip, a severe shoulder injury, stopped me from studying Portuguese in Salvador, Brazil. I had planned while there to visit Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, Suriname, Guyana, French Guiana, and most of the 13 Caribbean nations. There was a round-the-world trip I planned, but had met another lady who is now my ex-wife. I would have traveled to likely all the countries of Asia, the South Pacific, and a number of detached territories of various countries. I was planning to visit Antarctica, and while there climb Mount Vincent at about 16,000 feet, nearly 5,000 meters. I chose my ex over the whole trip, but I still did a portion of it. It began 4 months after I met her. The trip would have been for more than 3 years. I did still go to Antigua, Guatemala to study Spanish for 9 months during the Guatemalan Civil War. Antigua during Spanish times had numerous cathedrals ruined by earthquakes. The city was mostly surrounded by 2 very large 12,000 foot plus, 3,800 meter high active volcanoes. The city was a beautiful example of Spanish colonial, particularly Baroque, architecture, and had been the capital of Spanish Guatemala from 1524 to 1776. It was the most important Spanish city between Mexico City and Lima, Peru. I traveled through the civil wars of El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and on to Belize through the southern Mexico jungle during the local tribe uprising there in Chiapas. Another portion of the 3+ year trip I did was 17,000 miles of driving around the U.S., including Alaska and Canada. The rest of the planned trip was to be through all of Eastern Europe. which I later did, and my second trip to the Middle East. As it is, I have traveled to over 70 countries. Had I done the trips I had planned, I would have traveled to nearly all, if not all, of the world's 190 plus countries. I also would have traveled thoroughly through nearly every country I visited. Had I decided to do the caravan trip, had I not met my ex-wife, had I not been in a car accident, and had I not badly injured my shoulder, I believe, assuming I survived the trips, been the most traveled person in history. When I was 23 years old, I met a consulate general, a position, as I understand it, to be the highest non-political person stationed in a given country by the U.S. government. He, the consulate general, was impressed with what I knew about the world. We met over several days. I was introduced to a head of state and some dignitaries from various countries. It was as if he were grooming me to work for the U.S. State Department. Later on, he would offer me a position. My whole career would then be spent working abroad. This would rotate between 4-year assignments of stable countries and 4 years in unstable countries. Not living in the U.S. for the next 42 years concerned me, and I turned it down. I later became involved with an affiliated spinoff of the UN Millennium Project. Several of those involved with the Millennium Project were growing frustrated and instead turned their efforts in a different direction. A more mobile project, as they saw it. I was hired because of my ability to survive and my knowledge on the world in general. My contract was in place, and I was a couple of weeks away from being flown to Uganda. I had done a few months of intense study, learning all I could about Africa. Had the project lasted 10 to 15 years, I'm sure I would have been sent to every developing country in the world. The financial crash of 2009 caused the financiers of the project concern. They withdrew their financial promises, and the project was put on hold, never to recover. To be the most traveled person in history in itself would have meant little to me. To have traveled to every country would have meant little to me. As I look at goals as being a base to what I've done, but nothing more, I would have been able to travel professionally with book deals, sponsorships, and so on. I believe I had the obsession and drive to do this. Never was traveling tiring for me. Each day renewed me with a new surge of adrenaline and appreciation for what I was doing. Never did a thought occur to me to stop a trip, no matter what happened. I often talk about experiences outside of meditation as being meditative. That is because I feel much of life can and should be meditative. My traveling experiences were meditative. I had complete focus, and I was going to be relentless or never back down from experiencing exactly what I wanted to experience. I can't say I know what produced that mindset. As I've mentioned, this I will explore. Everyone should explore the motives behind their passions and apply the curiosity and pursuit in other areas of their lives. Some of the next episodes will be about my early fascination with South America. Thank you so much for watching, and please support the channel by subscribing and liking. YouTube then sends the videos on to others. See you in the next episode.